So on a 79 Mini, I have these brackets in the rear and they control camber. Problem is that my car had positive camber in the rear about 1 degree and I want to bring to zero at least -1. So I installed these guys, which worked quite well. I was able to get it, had it set. But I also have a new issue that I also have some Castor issue on the other side. Made sure that all the joints are tight. So between the main pin of the rear subframe, there's this rubber that's right in here behind. This gets that top bolt and the bottom bolt fastened to the car. So you want to make sure that there's no play in there. If I ton of force, I could see just a smidgen, but very little. It can get in there. So everything's tight. Everything's tight back here. Everything's here. So there's no issue there. So what I have to do then is replace these guys with a Castor Camber one. So I ended up buying the ones from KAD. I'm going to pop those on, then get the wheel alignment. So these guys work well if you just have an issue with camber and you want to just change the angle of the tire from positive to negative, or at least back to zero. And they do work quite well. So before I move the bracket, what I have done, I just taken off and I installed just a camber gauge just to show that where it is now, because it's on the hoist, may not be sitting level. What it is, I can set it to whatever I want. I know now when I put it back together, I should be in that vicinity. It's just a magnet, just put that across. So I know then when everything goes back together, we'll have similar settings as we do now prior to getting a four-wheel alignment done. Slots on here for alignment that you use your big flat washer, your lock washer, and your nut. Sorry, your bolt in those particular places. KAD brackets, very nice to install. There was no issues with them to get them on. They're pretty decent. They came out of, where do we get these from? Oh, yeah, they're the KAD parts. I got 2 in a box. Oh yeah. So they came from Hunter Classic Sports in Victoria, BC. And that's the 250-383-5173 is his phone number. And they cost, I believe, 280 bucks. But they're very nice to put on. You can see the splines that are on here. Center slot. So that goes over that particular position right here. So once you have that, you'll have this small plate right here, and they have the same splines on it. Those splines here will fit in and then be able to click and slide. That's your Castor, and then your camber up and down. And that will lock into that plate. Very well done. But they're not cheap, but they are. One good thing about these, bloody thick. They are strong and durable. They're not like the thin ones that I had, the original ones were that were a bit floppy. So I've just taken off the old brackets. As you can see on this bracket, it has adjuster for camber. It goes up and down. You can adjust by loosening off the bolts, bringing it up and down. What this will cause, and as this whole radius arm will move up and down as it's required for the alignment. But this is the only one you can do, and it doesn't do Castor. But we can do for Castor is on this point here on the subframe, here and here, you could actually add washers or shims, they call them, to bring it out. But that'll give you toe out. It'll bring it closer this way. Problem is, if you have to go towards the front of the car, you can. A way around that, if you have issues, is using the KAD one. The KAD one will offer Castor and camber. Huge hole where the threaded shaft will go through the radius arm, and this will then give us a lot more freedom to move forward, back, up, down. These don't move, but of course the radius arm does move, and that's where the control is going to take place. Before doing all of this, you got to do one thing to be sure. Don't end up replacing all this fancy stuff because they aren't cheap. You got to make sure that your shaft inside your radius arm is in good shape. There are roller bearings and a bushing at one end. Gotta make sure there's no play in there, no clunking around. If there is, fix that first. There's a quarter 28 grease nipple. Make sure they're clean and apply grease to that. I've taken mine off to replace with a new one. As well, the body and the rear subframe joined together. At the front of the subframe, we have upper and lower bolt. There's a rubber bushing in here. They can be upgraded. You gotta make sure that you do not have play between that bushing and the rear subframe. If you do, replace it. You're just wasting your time putting it all on. They were done recently. There's very little play. There's a little bit of movement, very little. They're pretty darn tight. So I'm happy with that. What I had to do though, once I took off the old support, as you can see, 1, 2, 3, 4 holding it on, these threads are a little knackered at the end. So what I've done, I just went down, traced the threads with a thread chaser. It's a 1/2 inch 20 on this particular one, no metric, 1979. And all this is just a thread chaser. You can tell by how it looks inside. It looks like a tap, or a die I should say. You can use a 1/2 inch 20 die if you need to, but this one's preset. It just goes over, traces the thread, takes off any high or low spots, cleans up the top. So that's now done. So once you know that everything's secure, I had an issue here as well. That top bolt was actually stripped. So I ended up drilling it out a bit bigger, and I put in a 3/8 24. So 3/8 24, 5/16 24. I think that's 5/16 and 5/16. They're big nuts. You can see here, they're a big diameter. So I had enough space to drill it out, retap it, and we're all set. So I kept the same fine thread. This bracket, when it goes on the vehicle, it's going to go in behind the radius arm and lock in place. There's a bolt here and here. These ones sort of get snugged up first before the bottom ones. So then this can slide in closest to the front of the subframe. Then the bottom ones will get tightened. With these, they actually supplied in the kit socket head cap screws, but they're button heads. As you can see here, the button head is a little bit shy. It's not full length, and that will fit into here. One at the top, one at the bottom. This way, the back of the radius arm is not banging against those bolts. If you used a regular bolt head and a big washer, you're gonna see that top is gonna bang, 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 so you're not gonna get full adjustment on this unit. So we're using button heads top and bottom. The lower ones are regular hex bolts. Not an issue there. So once this is all popped out, it's all cleaned up. All we're gonna do now is pop this in. There's not much space, so you can actually take the radius arm and move it back just to clear that space, just to get it in. Once it's in, it won't fall out. It's sort of sits there. We can go ahead and put the two button heads up here and the 2 hex bolts down here. Then we can torque it up. So as you can see, the socket head cap screws are in place. One here and one down there. I put a little bit of white liner so you can see it. And of course, there are 2 bolts down here. So tighten those, and I tighten these. So now we have freedom in this section here. I'll just rotate this a smidgen. You can see. As you can see now, there's our center bolt. That's where the grease nipple is going to go. We have all that clearance around on the radius arm. So when that happens, we're then able to say, okay, if there's an adjustment needed, we can take her up, we can take her down. So we can take that right down. So put a lot of positive camber on, or we can take it up and get rid of the positive camber. We can get quite high, quite high on that if we request it. And then of course the Castor, which is in and out, so that we can move it back and forth. So it turns out to be quite good of an item to get. Let's scroll that a bit. So then, sorry for the judder. We have our plate. On the plate, you're going to see it's ribbed. And you can see the rib lines on there, which fit the rib lines on here. They do go sort of on one way, so the shortcut goes to the front, of course, because of our mount to the body. They should go on somewhat. It's great. You don't want to put them on like that. You don't want to put them on an angle. Actually, it clicks in quite good when you find the position you require from the alignment. I don't want to want to get too tight yet. So just give it a bit. So now we've sort of locked it snugly, but loosish. So it's not going to go up and down on the camber. As you can see, it's sort of locked. But if I actually had now to adjust the caster, I could move it back like that, you see. Maybe it's a bit too tight. But that can be done at the shop. So you can see now I can slide that back if I need now a positive toe, or if I got to bring it in, I can slide it from the back and move it in. It's probably easier using the brake. Bring it in like that. So now I can bring it right in for a toe the opposite way. But I'll leave it in this approximate position just to give an idea. Here's just where I had the rotor, the drum. I have aluminum drums lined. So I've had that set approximately where I want it to go, and right now I had that set and it's way out, so I know that I have to just roughly bring it back to where it was, which means adding a bit of camber. It's like I really can't do Castor on these. I don't know what way it's going to be. Can't remember where I go this way. It's this way. There we are. It's pretty zero now. Yeah. A little bit more there. That's pretty close. And we'll get that finally adjusted out at the shop. And just make sure when you're done, and before you take it in, you do it in the nut. It's kind of important to have that tight when driving down the street. And torque it. Do that after, once the car is back together. Do have a new grease nipple. Grease nipple's quarter 28, straight. Don't put a 90 degree on because then you can't get the bloody bolt off in the future, if needed. So that's basically wraps up that side. And we're all ready for it then to get over for alignment. So on the front subframe of the Mini, you want to address this too if you're going to do alignment. Your front subframe attaches to your body. Just at the back part of it, you're going to see these mounts. I replaced them with aluminum because the rubber ones were actually ripped. So there's no actual support. The only thing that's supporting is the top subframe mount bolt, which is the big center one. So on that as well, you drop the subframe, take out the rubber, and I put aluminum. This one is aluminum mount, and that side, the right, will be the left from the driver's seat. That's been replaced as well. As at the front, we made sure that going through, these were solid and mounted up well too. So your frame is now solid. So you don't want to have any movement there prior to alignment, because it's just going to be body flexing and everything else. So what I ended up doing is that this lower arm can now control camber on the car. So I wanted a negative 1.5 degree. Right now it's sitting at positive 1.5, wearing out the tires on the edges. You don't want that. So I ended up buying these guys out of BC. And they're quite well on car adjustment. Loosen bolt, a nut, loosen nut. There's one left hand, right hand thread. And then you can adjust the center, just like on a clothesline, to get the exact requirements. Once that's done, I also replaced the front bar. As you notice, good quality silicone based. So we're not having any issues with any movement. Down here we have a Castor adjustment now. Very easy to do. Once the nut's free, you just turn up here, turn it until you get it longer or shorter to get your right Castor. Then that takes care of the front on the passenger side. Driver's side is the same way, as you can see. Very good control arm. And your main support arm at the front, it's just boom, locked into place, ready to go. Just make sure you have no looseness before you do all this. Just make sure your upper ball joint, lower ball joint have no play. Take care of that, not with grease, but actually re-shim it if it's requested, or remove shims. Make sure your boots aren't leaking anywhere. Go through that, verify. As well as your steering control arm at the back. You want to make sure that that's in good shape. And for the guy that's going to do your alignment, that bolt is actually free and you don't have tightness. You want to have all that ready to go. So I made sure that was free, lubed up. These guys were new, so I didn't over tighten them for them. So I went to the shop. It was a lot easier to do and get it done all at once. And that was it for the front. So this way I have 1.5 negative on the front, both wheels. And I want to get the back the same too. So now, so you can somewhat see that now, that it's in at the top, out at the bottom. Prior to that, it was the opposite. And the tires are just wearing on that ledge. Before we alignment, I went to Autobahn in Manotick. I had in the Service Orange manual variations. So, you know, you want to make sure that you do what it is. And that's one of them is the camber. The camber, you don't want to go too much, it's harder to steer, but I was at positive, not negative. So I ended up wanting at least a negative 1.5 or at least 1 degree. The Castor is, you can see it, I want 4 degrees, ride height. So the ride height, you got to make sure that's done first. You can adjust that. You want to make sure that your height is set well. If it's too low, it does change what your vehicle will do for you. So front and rear, there is the numbers for that. The rear, they want 30 minutes negative. I was at positive, that's why my tires were wearing. The toe, 1/16. And that's where I have an issue on the driver's rear. I can't get that adjusted out. And it's 7/16 right now. So it's a huge difference. So the alignment is 1/16 toe out. There's a camber and the Castor at the bottom, which is where I think we did it be 3 degrees. So it worked out quite well in the front. The front adjusted well with all these new parts. The rear, I just got the camber done as best as I could, but now I can go back, get that redone, and have the car drive a lot better in that one corner, so I'm not wearing tires out. Because as you know, 10-inch tires ain't cheap.